D.C.K.O, aka the DC 2025 tournament arc. This event will see the heroes fighting and some of the villains also fighting to try and become King Omega to take on Darkseid, although that's probably not why the villains are fighting. There's another prize that you'll get to remake the universe. Now, this event has some wide-reaching implications, and that means that some of the ongoing books are going to reflect that, aka they're going to tie in. Now, when some hear the word tie-in, there can be a knee-jerk reaction.
No! No! God!
And depending upon which events you've been a part of or read, that can be understandable. At their worst, tie-ins can completely halt the flow of a book that you're reading. They can break narrative engagement, force one to pay attention to an event that they don't care about. They can be utilized as a case against continuity. However, at their best, they can reflect the rewards of intricate storytelling and planning. A showcase of what happens when there's collaboration across the line. They also can be implemented in such a way that they enhance or flow with the narratives that they're taking part of rather than stopping them. Their inclusion can be made to feel like a natural progression to the storyline if planned out far enough. And if they're done well enough, they can serve as an entry point for other books or to try to check out the rest of the universe as a whole or the main event if one isn't checking it out. So there are definitely different reactions that can happen, but it is understandable to clench a tiny bit. Now overall, DCKO has less tie-ins than it could, especially in terms of past events. It's trying to limit itself to the players and books affected, with more of a focus on the books that were directly leading up to it or seeding hints for it. So today we're going to take a look at 3. Superman 31, The Flash 26, and Justice League Unlimited number 12. Why those 3? Because those are the books that I'm reading. I need to catch up on Titans. I know that Titans 28 was also a tie-in. Also, 3 just gives us a nice spread. It's a nice number. I can chop up the chapters nicely. Also, this way we can kind of touch base on each book and see what's going on for those who haven't been keeping up. I'm Sash. This is Casually Comics. We're actually going to try and keep it a bit casual today. Let's just talk about some comics. I don't have a clever segue. Also, we're close to time of release, time of recording, so spoilers. And also, again, this is just going to be more of a discussion, less of a zoom in and enhance type of thing. Let's start with Superman 31, written by Joshua Williamson, with art by Eddie Barrows and Evan Ferreira. Colors by Alejandro Sanchez. The cover calls this the beating heart of Apocalypse, but the story itself is called Man of Apocalypse, a play on Man of Steel. Now, Superman is one of the books that has been building up to this event aggressively, and it makes sense because Superman is meant to be the core of the DCKO event. So of all the books to play into it intensely, it makes sense that it's this one. This is the one that most directly ties in. And it also had a special, because the last issue before this ended with the rescue of Booster Gold by Superman and Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime was left to fight the Darkseid Legion in the future, the Darkseid future. And there was also a special that continued on from that. So if one is reading all of that, this doesn't feel like an interruption, rather a continuation, but where it picks up from is a scene from DCKO. So this is the one where it may feel a bit like there is a gap if one didn't read that event. Although, of course, part of comics is sometimes coming into things already in progress. Now, we open on the Watchtower scene, but this one is a bit more cliff notes, and this issue in general is going to give us more salient details into Superman's headspace. This is very much an emotional issue for Superman. It also builds up some of his supports and explains some more of what's going on in the world. We do also get a quick flash to the tournament, but where the story picks up for the rest of it is in the lead up to. A lot of what is filled in is surrounding day 4 in DCKO, which is the day that the heroes spent with their families. But we also see some of the emotional buildup for Clark as he was reluctant to take part in the tournament. You get to see him do things like reach out to Jor-El and try and understand what he is meant to do, because the thing is to defeat Darkseid, one must become like Darkseid. It takes a Darkseid to fight a Darkseid.
I know you're not really you. You're just a simulation the Rock can provide to give me some history and comfort. So I'll understand if you can't really answer this question, but Father, why did you only save me?
Because your mother and I love you and wish to save you.
What about a larger ship?
Space travel had been illegal on Krypton for generations. Knowledge from outside our world was forbidden. Because of this, I was forced to build your rocket with limited resources and in secret.
But what if you had unlimited resources?
I have no knowledge of that.
Father, if you could have the help and resources and the ability to build more shuttles, what would you have done?
I would have saved everyone.
Everyone. Thank you, Father.
Admittedly, this scene hits a little different in the era of people really talking to AI seriously. Maybe he has made it up. AI hallucinates. So in a way, it kind of works better for some of the suspicion that Lois is going to have. This issue also has some handy-dandy editor's notes, always appreciated, by me at least. You'll see things in moments such as when Parasite references some key events, like when he fought Doomsday. Also, I just love how Parasite is drawn here. He looks creepy, as Parasite should. Now, Superman had been working with Mercy, and at the time, Memory Less Lex, that's hard to say. And the company had been renamed to Supercorp, but now it's back to being LexCorp. But he still needs their help, and they will still provide some help for the arcs that they're building. Superman has some strong moments there. He also has some strong moments with Lois. And she, true to character, is skeptical of what they've been told by the Time Trapper because he is currently an old Doomsday. And she's not over Doomsday killing Clark, and she never will be. You're planning to lose.
We could, and if I do, I need to make sure you are safe.
Just me? It can't be just me. If you're doing this, you can't give me special privilege, Clark. You have to get everyone.
I know, Lois.
Clark then spends some time with his family, including Ma and Pa Kent, and it's really sweet. And the interaction between him and Lois, there are just some layers there. Just their base characters playing off of each other. She's just not trusting. She's not fully down for Mercy. She doesn't really trust Jor-El, and that ties into the past experience she's had with him during the whole time that John was aged up. They do lightly reference that. That doesn't get an editor's note. Maybe we're trying to forget.
I saw Jor-El at the fortress. I asked him if they had any knowledge of Darkseid or this King Omega and Krypton's archives. He said they had no record of it, because knowledge from outside the planet Krypton was illegal.
Of course he said that.
I can do this tournament, but not if my mind is preoccupied with everyone here. I need to know you're safe.
They will be, Clark. Keep your ears open so you can hear us cheer you on. I just love this kiss panel, everything about it. Of course, if you're not a Clark and Lois person, this may have fallen flat. This story does feel like it's moving things along. It does feel like they're moving in tandem, because you get to see some of the evacuation, but also it sets up some more of the story elements, and makes the promise that things are going to stay interesting, even though Clark is going to be away. That his supports are definitely going to have things to do. Superman has a long history of having supports who can hold their own. Jimmy and Lois had their own books for over a decade. We also still will be seeing Superman throughout this, so the balance will hopefully be maintained. Now, Lois does go to the fortress, try and get some real answers from Jor-El. She can't, but she does activate Lara, and so she learns some pertinent information that will have ramifications for Superman in the tournament, but she doesn't have a way to tell him. So there's this tension set up that works for this issue, but doubly so if you're reading the tournament KO, because now you know, oh no, there are things that Clark doesn't know that he needs to know, and that's probably only going to increase. There's a whole bunch of side storylines and tangents being set up for people doing their own thing outside of this tournament. Batman's going to have a whole thing, even though he died. Now, as for keeping up the action, we do see Superboy Prime and Sunboy of the Darkseid Legion show up. Superboy Prime has been on a redemption arc in the Superman comics during Williamson's run. We are going to briefly talk about the final page spoiler, so skip this time code if you don't want to know. But Lois does get her powers back, and so she gets to be Superwoman. And so that's part of how we're going to ensure that there are people who are going to fill in the action beats while Superman is gone. We've got Prime, we've got Lois, we have a bunch of problems they need to deal with. Lois Lane getting powers is such an old callback. She first got them in the 1940s and also called herself Superwoman. At one point I wanted to make a whole Lois gets powers video all in one. It's so many times. Just in the Golden and Silver Age, it's so much. Also, man, Sunboy looks cool. Skull on Fire is just a look. Whether you're Ghost Rider or Dr. Phosphorus or Blight, whoever you are, it adds menace. This is a solid character building issue for Superman, and it moves things forward for his plot and for KO. It still serves to make him feel important and central, and it also strengthens his support and his world by making it feel that it can stand with him off doing other things, and they do still show some snippets of what he's doing. Now, admittedly, the pace of this can feel a bit quick in terms of moving from the day to the evacuation and things like that, the set pieces, but overall the flow is strong and everything occurs in the order that one would expect it to. This is the issue that does make you feel the most like you're missing out by not reading KO. Hopefully in a, oh, I should go read that way, and not in a, ugh, I really don't want to have to deal with that kind of way. If one doesn't care at all about KO, there is enough here to continue on about the story, but they may feel some interruption because it is so relevant to what's going on. If one does care, there's some nice overlaps and nods. Clark calls his weapon the Dawn's Knuckles. It's cringe, but it's meant to be. It's intentional cringe. Still, of the tie-ins, this is arguably the most tie-in-y of the ones we're going to look at. So be forewarned, for forewarned is forearmed. Next, The Flash 26. This one's written by Mark Waid and Christopher Cantwell. The art's by Vasco Georgiev and the colors by Matt Herms. The cover says Impulse Point. The title is Impulse Control, Part 1. Can you tell this is going to be about impulse? Now, this one doesn't start off throwing you into the D.C.K.O. meeting. It instead lets you spend some time with the Flash, Wally West. Because this is the start of a new story for the Flash, because it's coming off of another run. And the last issue was actually the end of the Cy Spurrier run. So everything wrapped up. They even had that paragraph that kind of just sums up the vibe and feeling inside the story itself, such as, our adventures will continue. It had a nice vibe at the end. But this issue is kind of a new start, even though it is also a tie-in, and also Mark Waid has written the Flash, specifically Wally, extensively in the past. I'm going to read Wally at a regular speed because there's a lot to say and I want you to understand it. My name is Wally West. I'm the fastest man alive, but these days I'm wondering if I need to slow down. I mean, not right now. Alchemist is teleporting a few hundred miles a second, but I'm running so fast I need to take into account the curvature of the Earth. Otherwise, my linear velocity might accidentally become my escape velocity, and I'll eject myself off the planet. So I guess I don't mean slow down, I mean be careful. As one can probably glean, Wally's not just talking about the situation, but his status in life in general. Maybe he needs to be more careful. Also, that intro does have very, yeah, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got into this predicament energy. Now, Wally is thinking about his status quo, what's about to come. There were some brief flashbacks and there were some editor's notes. This one has extensive editor's notes and not just two things that directly impact it. There are some other books that it pulls from, and it didn't have to, like it references the JSA. Like, yes, it references something that happens from it, but not all books that reference other things put the notes there, and I really appreciate it. This one says, yes, the universe is connected, and we think that you're interested in hearing more about that. The confidence. And now it's after this intro and the capture of the Alchemist that we get to see the meeting. The D.C. K.O. Quantum Quorum meeting. But here we get to see the Flash's thoughts on it. how he feels. It doesn't linger there too long either, as we get some interludes with Bart and Irie, because this book does still have a Flash family kind of feel to it. Wally's kids are important to the book, and they have been for a while. We don't get to see Jay, but we did get to see Jay extensively in the last arc. Also, I think somewhere there's still a fan debate as to whether it's Jay or Jai. For those who don't know, Wally has twins. He also has a third child now. Him and Linda had another baby. Also, for those who really haven't been keeping up, Wally has been the Flash for a few years now at this point. The main Flash. Barry's still around. He's doing stuff. Barry's writing the new history of the DC universe, even cataloging things he should not know about. Now, Bart is being played up in this issue, and it's not really surprising. Mark Waid did co-create him. But so far, this issue seems to be tilting towards a Wally and Bart arc, and of course, some Max Mercury's in there. Bart and Irie are trying to take a ship for a joyride because we're trying to show that Impulse is impulsive. He's been a tad reset, which those who have read a lot of him will note, while for others it may not stand out so much. But he's a bit more in the vein of when he first arrived in that timeline. Not completely, but he's definitely a bit less mature. You could have been halfway to Andromeda before you considered whether or not that was a good idea. Irie needs to stretch her legs, Max. I do too, honestly. Bart, the fastest you will ever run in your life is when you're standing completely still. I can't tell if that's wise or just clever. Go ahead, shirk my advice all you want. No, I mean it. I can't tell. You can't tell because you do not have the experience to understand, Bart. Bart, are you listening to me? This issue does have a nice splash page to explain the tournament with all the different reactions from characters. If you were up on KO or you're just reading all the issues, it does add some nice variance to seeing the same scene because you're getting to see it from a bit of a different perspective. And if you're just reading this book, it does provide some necessary info. Now, one of the questions it needs to settle is who's going to go fight? Which Flash are we picking? Now, for those following, they know it's Jay, and he has no chill since it looks like he has the God Killer sword as a weapon. Here we see that Jay wants to fight because he wants to get more into action after Wildcat died. R.I.P. over in the JSA, and there's an editor's note. Now, in KO, we saw that everybody kind of just went along with Batman's plan of let's fight a tournament, but here we see that there are actually some different opinions, so this does build up KO in that way. It shows that not everybody was just down for it, aside from Superman, who is the one who we really saw oppose it. But here we see that some are pondering whether the term is actually a good idea, or whether the let's reset the timeline solution may actually have some merit. Now, Wally hangs out with Barry enough to know that trying to reset the timeline is a bad idea, but Max, who has a whole history of traveling through time, doesn't really feel like it would be the worst. Cripes, Max, more time travel? We've already got displaced heroes from every era of history. Do you know Hop Harrigan's sleeping on the floor of Ted Kord's closet? Not to mention the time stream is literally on fire. Time Tapper showed me. I saw it. Darkseid is violently pulling it apart, remaking it in his own image. Can I have an issue of Hop Harrigan having to squat in Ted Kord's closet? I need details on little information like this. Now, there is another viewpoint. It's from Bart, and it's why don't they just take on Darkseid head on? He feels that he can do that. He's very cocky. He's impulsive. He feels he can handle it, and so he just sets out to do so, and seemingly instantly erases himself from the time stream. So now Wally has to go after him. Now, from a KO perspective, that starts to explain why we have the Flash we have there. And from an in-story perspective, it sets off this new storyline that we're about to embark on. It sets up this new arc, which, while it ties to all the Darkseid stuff, is also seemingly going to be some character building for Wally and Bart. On a personal note, I really like this art. Some people find it too loose or too manga-y, but it works for me. It does make everybody look super young, though. Now, this issue is heavy on the Darkseid is the big bad. So if you're burnt out of Darkseid, then this will not help with that. Darkseid is waiting for us, specifically for Bart and me. He knew we were coming, has somehow always known. See, for some, this might be too much of a ramping up of Darkseid, but that's the position he now occupies in the DC universe. Now, as they fight Darkseid, they see that he is indeed more powerful than they ever imagined. Also more than they can handle, and so they have to try and flee. But as they escape, the timeline seems really messed up, leaving Bart alone with a not quite right Max Mercury. This issue hits the ground running and just goes for it. It feels like a story in progress, but no more so than any other comic issue. It's a bit like you're stepping in mid-arc, which does work for what's going on. And it does present all you need to know to follow inside. And it does provide a lot of additional details, though not all, through the editor's notes. Now, this is another Flash plot playing with time travel, so if one is not a fan of those, this may not be welcome. Now, some of the emotional beats for Wally and Bart may feel a bit familiar for those who have read a lot of the Flash, but for some they may be new, and also they do work in terms of what's going on in this storyline. There are a few that feel a tad overconstructed, like Wally's bully memory and then the transitioning into the Darkseid moment, but overall this is a solid and fun issue that lets a lot of the Flashes have a little moment and it sets up its own storyline that can be followed outside the tournament. This one really works as both. What about our last one for this vid? Justice League Unlimited number 12. This one's also by Mark Waid. This one is art by Dan Mora and colors by Tamara Bonvillain. This is the Terrific 10 Part 1. And if you needed your Mr. Terrific fix after 2025 Superman, this is one of the places you can get it. Also, don't get excited. That's not Terry Batman Beyond. It's Tim. I know. I was sad too. Unless you like Tim Drake Batman Beyond from Future's End, in which case rejoice. Now, of all of the issues presented, this one requires the most knowledge of the DC lore in general to hit all its points. Because this comic, while it was also setting up some things for KO, was also coming off of its own interconnected arc between it and World's Finest, which wrapped up recently. We Are Yesterday. Although the last couple of issues had been a KO prelude. And in that arc, a whole bunch of heroes ended up being displaced in time. There was also a hyper time element that was introduced. So this story is a bit more fun if one recognizes most of, if not all of the displaced characters. And also some of the impactful emotional moments land better if one knows the history of the characters and what is being referenced. If you know that, they land hard. If not, it's a coin toss. They may still, but there's also the question of someone going, okay, and. Now this story opens up on the evacuation, but on some of the more chaotic elements, some of the ways that it's not going the best. We get the Atom and Batgirl explaining everything that's going on in terms of why they're evacuating. But then we also see that things have gotten worse because the villains, the ones that weren't taken to the Phantom Zone or the ones who didn't manage to crash the tournament, are supercharged. So Batgirl and the Atom get taken out by Polka Dot Man. Now Mr. Terrific instantly figures out what's going on because there's not time for him to have to think about it. And his answer is Deep Cut, Neuron. Neuron had an arc back in the day that they cliff notes wherein he supercharged a whole bunch of villains. And so Mr. Terrific surmises that he must be doing something similar here, and also that he's offered the villains safe passage in hell, and that's why they aren't evacuating and aren't concerned. So because this is his hypothesis, he's made his own special team, an A-team. Actually, it's a team of the displaced heroes because they've already explained that the heavy hitters are away or they're helping with the evacuation, which is a good way to use them. I posted some panels of Guy and everyone felt that he looked like Guile. Now, one of the interesting things that this story does is that it does take some time, a decent amount of time actually, trying to reconcile where these characters fit in terms of canon, in terms of do they matter or not. And the answer that it comes to is truly horrific for the characters when one thinks about it. And Mr. Terrific just lays it on them, which is that yes they do, but also no they don't. At present, we're siled off from the multiverse. No, I've done the homework. Here's the reality, and it's not pretty. Each of you represents a single standalone second, haphazardly extracted without consequence from your timeline. You're not who you think you are. You're a quantum ghost existing apart from the hero you represent. For those who don't speak Interlac, he asked if you were real. Yes and no. If our champions are successful and Darkseid's damage is reversed, the timeline will stabilize. Randomly, you'll cease to exist, while your source self continues on, never missing you. The nine of us are remnants of a sort then, living on borrowed time. So basically, yes, they did exist. They matter in that sense, but also they've been separated, extracted, and anything that happens here is not going to impact the currently existing versions of themselves, so it won't disrupt the timeline. They're just gonna be and then not be. Well, that's some intense information. Let's hope it doesn't send any of them off the deep end. Also, this answer, it's one of those ones that's meant to kind of forestall fan questions because it kind of says yes to anything one could ask, although people will still find a way. Fans will always find a way to question. Also, it's the kind of thing that one could argue with. If one is the kind of fan who likes to argue about the minutiae of such things, one could just live here in this moment. This feels like more of a go with it moment and just a chance to explore and play with these different characters from these disparate parts of canon and throw them together in an interesting way and see how they interact. There's just some things that directly contradict, and it seems like they may just continue to do so. The new history of the DC universe also still leaves some threads. Ooh, also want to see something sad? Hold on. Are you ready for first world problems? So, done. 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 One of these things is not like the other. I got the store late, and so my version of number 4 of the new history of this universe does not match. It's still a really nice cover though, so it's fine, but the copium. Yes, I could order the cover that I'm missing, but I'm not going to, so I can't complain about it. Now, when it comes to the rest of Justice League Unlimited, we do get to see some of the characters have moments as they come to terms with this news and their encounters with this new status quo, and these moments are very strong. Things like Aquaman reacting to seeing that he will have a child in the future as he once more recalls the death of his son. Guy learning that him and Ice don't stay together or get married, and backing off very quickly when seeing that's the case, even though it does hurt, but he keeps the hurt on the inside. Power Girl confronting her feelings about her existence. Those moments could hit really hard depending on one's relationship with the characters. Now, the setup for the next issue is that they're going on a quest to hell, and that's a fun hook. Too bad they can't bring some of the people who have been there before. Fire and Ice have been there. Of all of these issues from a tie-in perspective, this one feels the least like you have to read KO at all, even though it does still tie in, but it's minimal. It puts it there at the front and then gets it out of the way. It continues on directly from what's been going on in Unlimited. So if that was what one was reading, this is gonna flow fairly well. If one is jumping in here because they saw D.C K.O tie-in, they're trying to collect everything, it may be a bit more difficult. It depends. It could be a wow, what's going on? Or whoa, what's going on? Because there is a lot going on here. To me, it's really interesting and fun, but I can also see it being a bit overwhelming. Some may feel like they have to do some homework to figure out who people are. If someone enjoys researching characters, that's a good time. If not, then no. Different strokes for different folks. Now, as someone reading all these books, I liked these tie-ins. I was overall impressed by either how little they interrupted or how well they were integrated. Although, again, Superman does feel the most like read KO. If you read all of them, it's a very rewarding experience because you get to see this event from so many different angles, and it makes the universe feel very connected because each one is dealing with a different aspect of what's going on. If you're someone who enjoys that element of the DC universe, it's a real treat. If you're someone who doesn't and finds it burdensome and some don't cross the streams, then it may be more frustrating. For me, this paid off a lot of what the books have been building up to, and showcases interconnectivity as a strength and something uniquely accomplished in the comic medium. Those are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. Do you disagree entirely? Were there any of these issues that you just felt did not land? What have you been reading? Are you newer to the scene? Are you catching back up? Are you just jumping in for this? Did these break your stride? Did they make you want to read KO if you didn't? Do you feel like it enhanced KO if you did? Share all your thoughts. Also, let me know if you like this more rapid fire type of presentation of a bunch of comics. If so, I've read a bunch of Speed Racer. We can talk about that. Mad Cave has Speed Racer comics. Okay, enough tasks and yapping. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. Please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. There will, of course, be more videos coming soon. Wherever our whims take us, the journey continues on. I'm talking too fast. See you again soon. Bye.